Hate to interrupt the conversation here, but it's probably about time to get started. All right. I've been told I can't stall for any longer, as much as I wanted to anyway. All I was asking for was another 45 minutes, and it would have been good. So I'll try to make this as painless as it's really painful to me, I'll admit here. This is my first time teaching the Auditorium class. I've taught a few adult classes, but not many, so you guys are terrifying to me. All right, I need to be honest about my current condition. I've got sweaty palms, got shakiness, dry mouth, and I'm going to overuse my notes and I don't know what to do with my hands. So they may be everywhere, but obviously those symptoms are that of stage fright. So I've got plenty of that. Haven't been officially diagnosed with stage fright, but if I pass out here in a few minutes, when the EMTs come, have them test. Is there a swab for that, I think, maybe? But we'll see. Hopefully some of my fears are understandable. I am standing before some of the pillars of the Church of Christ, and it's intimidating. Many past, present, and future leaders are in this room, and I get to speak to them. I'm intentionally going to ignore the fact that this is probably also being streamed on the internet, but it would be great for a future blooper reel, so keep that in mind. The voices in my head are telling me that none of that is true, it is totally off, and it's not really recording, and since that's what I just heard in my head, that's what I'm going to go with. I realize these fears are ridiculous. I feel support of the church, I do. I know that none of you want me to fail. Well, Eric, yeah. But sometimes logic struggles to hold a candle against anxiety. I've tried the recommended relaxation techniques. I've tried prayer. I've spent hours memorizing and preparing. I've even gone as far as imagining all of you without mask on, and it's terrifying. Now that you've either laughed, rolled your eyes, or both, let's get into it. Today we're going to continue our Ephesians study by going into the short series of conduct. Last week, Jake finished up the combat series, and in a week or two, Gene will finish up the rest of the series. Obviously, like a thorn among roses and a rough among the diamonds, that's why they put me in the middle, so I'm the thorn and I'm the rough, so there you go. You'll appreciate their teaching more by listening to me. Thank you. Let's start by reading a passage from Ephesians 5:23 through 33. And it may be small, but I'll read it to you, don't worry. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ Jesus is the head of the church, his body, of which he is the Savior. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit to their husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her to make her holy, cleansing her by the washing with the water through the word, and to present her to himself as a radiant church, without stain or wrinkle or any other blemish, but holy and blameless. In this same way, husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. After all, no one ever hated their own body, but they feed and care for their body, just as Christ does the church, for we are members of his body. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. This is a profound mystery, but I am talking about Christ and the church. However, each one of you must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. So I'm going to go in a different direction than we commonly hear for this verse. We've heard many a debate on it, the roles of the husband and wife. But let's go from a spiritual leadership point of view. Now, I'm going to ask for some hands here, how many titled church leaders do we have in this room? Like ministers, elders, deacons, administration? Can I get some hands? Couple, 3, 4, 5, 6, So 6-ish. Good. All right. Now, how many church leaders do I have in this room without a title? Church leaders without a title. Got a couple. Okay. Interesting. So, all your hands should be up on that one. Unless, of course, I've already annoyed you too much or put you to sleep, then your hands are right where they need to be. So one more time, and I don't want to be called a hand-raising person in church, but let's do one more. How many leaders of any type do we have in this room? Any type of leader? Oh, come on. Everybody should raise your hand. I want to take your preacher's count. Looks like 1 million people. There we go. So if I reach one of you, that's a win for me. Right. So, over the last few weeks, the church has been working to find additional elders, qualified elders. Several classes were taught and comments were made from the podium about the required qualifications of these men. The search led us to Jason and Glenn, which is awesome. I'm sorry. I should probably use my hand to keep track of my notes. This is easier. Since very wise people gave those talks on the elders and their qualifications, I decided to go in a slightly different direction to that also. I want to address all of us in the room who lead without being in charge, who manage without being a manager, those who understand that you don't have to be in charge to have influence over an activity, a project, or a person. When this idea came to me, I ran to my computer and got on the Google. I searched for things like leading when you're not in charge, managing when you're not a manager, that kind of stuff. And I had 2 qualifications. One, I had to understand it, so novels were out, coloring books were in. And 2, it had to be free, because I'm really cheap. I found 2 things that came to mind, or that actually met these criteria. They were both understandable and free. The first was an article, Project Management Tips for Non-Project Managers, from the Northeastern University website. I believe they're out of Boston. The second was a book titled How to Lead When You're Not in Charge by Clay Scroggins, which I downloaded the audiobook for free from the library. I decided to use the tips from the Northeastern's website and sprinkle in a little tidbits from Clay Scroggins' book. As we go through these tips, I want you to think of a project, a ministry, a task that you could do to further God's kingdom. It could be in this church or not. Again, just something that you can be involved with. Maybe I should tell you a little bit more about me outside of the church. I've worked at Chesapeake Energy, an oil and gas company, for the last 15 years. 13 and a half of those, I've been an individual contributor. That's a catchphrase for peon, slacker, underachiever, gopher, all of that. I did spend a short stint of 1.5 years as a supervisor, but for anybody who's ever dealt with HR issues and that kind of stuff, you know the good years are the 13 and a half years. My current title is Land Advisor. It sounds cool. I don't know what it is. But I am not in management. I do know that. And I have no direct reports. Now I should tell you what my title is in this church. According to the F1 app, I've been here for 3-ish years. According to the F1 app, I am a baptized member. Not a deacon, not an elder, not a staff member. I don't have a title of power in either place, but I can confidently say that I am a leader. I have changed the path of my company, and they wouldn't be the same without me. And I've changed this church. If nothing else, if I wouldn't have come 3 years ago-ish, you wouldn't be listening to me this morning. So let that one sink in. Now keep in mind, I didn't say that I have changed my company or this church for the better. I'm not that egotistical, and it isn't for me to decide. But I have led people and decisions in both organizations. So let's get into project management tips for non-project managers. We will talk about them in detail, but reading through them we have, begin with the end in mind. 2, understand your goal. 3, be considerate. 4, manage risk. 5, avoid perfectionism. 6, manage your time effectively. 7, avoid multitasking. 8, use the proper tools. 9, get familiar with project management methodologies. And 10, pursue a degree in project management, which is, I don't know how I'm going to tie that in, but we'll get there. All right. I love how each of these are easily biblically backed concepts. It's almost like we were given a management handbook when we were given our first Bible. So, let's begin with the end in mind. Focus on the finish line. First point here. Now, what's our finish line? I'm sure everybody's going to give the Gene's little friend answer and say heaven, because that is our finish line. You know, it's like Jesus and God, same type things. But let's read, and there are many things to back that up. So 2 Timothy 4:7. Let's see. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Then we've got Philippians 3:14. I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. Yes, heaven is the right answer here, but let's think a little smaller scale. Again, we're trying to think about a project, a task, or a ministry that you could do to further God's kingdom. So maybe it might be start a new small group that meets weekly. That's something that you can do. Start a door knocking campaign. I know it's scary, but that is an option. And you could teach a class, which is terrifying. But it is something you can do to move God's kingdom forward and become an elder. I know we've got 2 men right there who are working their way to become that elder, and which is awesome. It's great, and maybe that's been their task their whole life. So that's very cool. So now, go to the next one. There we go. Understand your goal. First one's vision. What do you envision your goal? What do you envision is going to happen with your goal? Strategy. How do you think you're going to get there? What's it going to take to make that happen? Self-discipline. Can you stay on task? 2 Timothy 1:7 says, "For God did not give us a spirit of timidity, but a spirit of power, of love, and of self-discipline." All right, can't be talking about management unless I come up with an acronym. So, acronym right there. Is your goal a SMART goal? This is one we use at work all the time. And it stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. Came up with an example. I will teach 2 auditorium classes at the South Yukon Church of Christ in the year 2020. Auditorium classes, yes. So, is that specific? I think so. Is it measurable? I said 2. Is it attainable? Oh boy, I think it is. Is it relevant? I think so. And time-bound, 2020. It only gives me a few months left. So, with your goal in mind, how do you respond to opportunities or distractions that are placed in your life? So, we do goals at work every year. And I'm sure if you guys have paid attention to the oil and gas industry or paying attention to job markets, when I said Chesapeake Energy, you cringe maybe a little bit. So one thing we have that happens at least every year anymore, this time it was twice a year, was layoffs. So it's been a blast. And you're probably wondering, how in the world can this guy up here still be employed for 15 years? It's a good question. I have no idea. I like to tell people that I am a hide-and-go-seek champions every time the layoffs come around. But since we set our goals every year, we have to stick to those goals. And when layoffs happen in the middle of the year, and they don't seem to coincide with goal setting time, we have to figure out how to deal with less people, deal with new roles, and it's always a challenge. And so how do you deal with those opportunities and distractions that come up when you've got a goal? For those of you who are still awake, it's pop quiz time. Does anybody have any goals that come to mind that you could make up? I'm not going to hold you to any of them. Does anybody have any goals that you can come up with that would fit this task here? Would you have any goals that come up and fit here? Perfect. Love it. Everybody's asleep. This is perfect. I can see what I want now. All right, so that was a total fail. I'm moving on.
I always have a goal to.
Okay. It is. No, that's perfect. And that probably trains you how to be a better Christian and lets you further God's kingdom by learning from the example of the Bible. That's awesome. Look at that. I got one. Thanks, Glenn.
You think about the goals that everyone, first year, everyone always has a goal.
Yeah.
Maybe 3 days. I know it's 4 days later. I guess it's a distraction. I guess my whole deal is, personally,
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
I agree 100%. I've done it 3 times. Does not have
Very good. You guys are way ahead of me on my lessons, so good job. We'll get there. Yes, sir. Yeah. Great point. Prayer tends to help us with everything. So we're like he designed it. All right. Go with be considerate. Again, this is a task-related item. So we're trying to lead without being leaders. Gotta have emotional intelligence. This is something I struggle with all the time. Can you read a crowd? You guys looked awake. I was wrong. Of course, joking. I struggle with that one a lot. Need to work on that. Qualities of effective communicators. You've got listening, clarity, organization, and sincerity. So you can't communicate if you can't listen. If you can't listen to other people, if you can't be clear in what you say. I use the word a lot, so hopefully I can cut that out and provide better clarity. Organization. If your thoughts are organized and you know what you're talking about, it makes it go a lot better with everybody. And sincerity, if you look like you're an honest person who really cares what you're talking about, you'll get a lot more response in your communications. Effective listening practices. We like to use the one at work of be here now. That means put your cell phone away, turn the TV off. I know every husband in the room has probably been told a few times that you need to put the TV down or listen because you're not doing a good job. That's important whenever you're trying to listen. Use communication to achieve your goals. Pretty self-explanatory there. Still got to communicate. Positive attitude. We've all heard the saying, it's easier to catch flies with honey than it is with vinegar. Very true. If someone walks in this room right now who's never been here before, they look different, they smell different, they act different, and we come across as really judgy and run them out, tell them how they should act, instead of going with a Christ attitude to them, they're not going to come back. So that's important. And then this is something I thought was interesting. We're talking about leaders without being leaders here, but are you really ready for your boss's job? If you're upset with a decision that an elder makes, that a teacher makes, that a boss makes, do you really think you're ready to take their position? 1 Peter 5:5. If I can get there. And maybe. There we go. 1 Peter 5:5 says, young men, in the same way, be submissive to those who are older. All of you, clothe yourselves with humility toward one another, because God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Let's go ahead and read 6:2. Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. And then Romans 13:1 says, everyone must submit himself to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Your boss was put there by God, which is crazy, especially if they're terrible. But you can learn from a terrible boss. You can learn what not to do. Some people exist in this world to be examples of what not to do. So it can help improve you. But your boss is probably there for a reason that you may not know. All right, manage risk. Don't be too busy. If you've got a loaded schedule, how can you flex? How can you take on more responsibilities if all you do is have a completely loaded schedule? If you've got baseball games, if you've got procrastination, that can take up your time too. There's many things that you can become busy with that really even aren't, you shouldn't be busy with. Have a plan when things go bad and stick to it. So if you've got a project and you've got your task or whatever that we're talking about here, what if someone stops it? What if someone pulls the funding? What if it's paused? Do you have a backup plan? Is there an alternate way around what was your current path? Do you know where God fits if one portion of your life begins eating up more time than it does now? So every morning you get up, it takes you 30 minutes, an hour to get ready, unless you're a college student, then it takes about 5. Then you go to work. Spend 8, 9 hours there, takes 20 minutes to get there, takes 20 minutes to get home. You get home, you eat for 30 minutes to an hour. You watch TV for all your shows. You have to watch at least 3 hours. You spend time with your kids or your family at some point in there, and then you might have 30 minutes for God. What happens if your boss then asks you to work late, work overtime? What happens if your meal, you decide to go to a 5-star restaurant and you have 7-course meals and it takes 2 hours to eat through there? Go to the melting pot, it takes at least 3. What happens if those things start eating up time? What suffers? Is it God? Matthew 6:33. Next page, right? Yes. It is. Yeah, that's perfect. You're right. Spending time with my family has been a major change. We've spent a month or two where I was at home, and it was eye-opening. One thing, I learned more about my kids and my family than I had before. Some good, some bad. But really, that slowing down, that stopping, that spending time with the people we really should be spending time with was something that was really cool. And amazing what we do fill up our schedules with. Right. Oh, did I read? Sorry, I didn't read Matthew 6:33. That says, But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. So again, seek first his kingdom. Not last, not every other week, not only on Sundays. Avoid perfectionism. Now I know Jesus was perfect, and we are to strive for perfection, strive to be more like him. But you've got to remember the end and focus on the goal. So let's say, like for me, getting ready for this class, I'm sitting in there typing on my computer away, making these slides and that kind of stuff. Let's say I don't like the color of my slides. Let's say I ran across something that stumps me and I don't know what to do. Does that mean I shut down? Does that mean it's not perfect, so I can't present it? No, you've got to be able to work with that kind of stuff. We can get into analysis paralysis and not do something because, well, what if? What if someone doesn't like this? What if I get in trouble for it? Yeah, hiccups both in and out of your control happen. So on the way here this morning, I could have run out of gas. Maybe because I didn't fill it up. I didn't, I made it. But that was something that would have been in my control. I could have gotten sick, especially nowadays it seems like, but something like that could pop up. Power outages, we saw that this last week. You know, it was unexpected. We didn't expect power to go out, and it did. So they happen. Learn how to get back on your horse. Don't be defeated. So Isaiah 43:18. Let's see. Forget the former things. Don't dwell on the past. So don't dwell on the things that you've been stumped with before. Get back on it. Do it again. Try again. Manage time effectively. Yes, sir.
I came across a quote regarding this.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was very fitting, especially God doesn't expect.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, progression versus perfectionism. Yeah. Like it. So manage your time effectively. This is where we start talking about accountability. Are you reliable? Are you responsible? Do you have an accountability partner? Jeremiah 17:9. Get there. The heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand it? So who controls your actions? Is it God or is it your heart? Adaptability. I timed myself several times on this lesson and realized it was 40 minutes long. Now I've got to adapt to it and speak a little faster because we actually had some comments. People were awake. So you got to be adaptable and manage your time effectively. Resilience. I love the quote, endeavor to persevere. I don't really know what it means, but I like it. So keep on keeping on is another one for me. It's a little simpler. Too many meetings do stifle creativity. If you have back-to-back meetings, this is probably more in the professional world, but it can also happen in churches too. If you've got back-to-back meetings and you ask questions in one meeting and then you've got another one right after it, and you have no time to think in between, how are you going to be effective in any of those meetings? How are you going to be able to be responsible? Are you going to remember what was asked in meeting 1 when you're in the middle of meeting 4 trying to figure out what their problems are? I know even our elders here can have meetings where they spend hours in meetings, and then they have to go home and deal with meetings at home, or they have to volunteer for projects, and they're expected to be there. So you need to have time, a little bit of downtime to put your thoughts together. Avoid multitasking. Cut down on your clutter. So think of the big picture. What's the big picture of your task? Are you trying to accomplish, are you trying to save the world fix every little thing? Or are you trying to accomplish your goal and work your way through it? Be more effective with less noise in your life. I don't think this is talking about volume. This is talking about all the little things that pop up. You've got the TV, you've got people talking to you. I'm not saying don't talk to people, that's not it. But there is a lot of things that we put in our lives that we allow to be noise in our lives that we need to cut back on. So switching from one task to another causes us to lose focus, attention, and productivity. Matthew 6:24. That one. No one can serve two masters. Either he will hate one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. So, first part of that sure talks about you can't have two masters. So, stay focused. Get your stuff done. I've heard the phrase of multitasking. You tend to do terrible on both tasks, or if you, something like that. I'm going to butcher it, but it's fine. Own your calendar. Does your calendar run you, or do you run it? Is that the only thing you look at every day is your calendar book? I know some of it's good because you might forget it otherwise, but is that all you focus on is your calendar book? Do you have time that you set aside without having to put it on the calendar for God? Use the proper tools. Have the right hardware, software, people to accomplish the task. Obviously, the Bible, this one right here, is one of our biggest tools we've got. But we also have other people's expertise. If you've got a task and you've got something you want to accomplish in this church, there are people who are out there who are willing to help. They may not be passionate about it like you are, but they're willing to help. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room. You can ask someone else. People have prior experiences, and that's something you can utilize. I'm not calling people tools, but there are benefits to having people and their other expertise in whatever project you're doing for the church. Managing up. Get familiar with the projects and management. Get familiar with project management methodologies. Managing up. So this is referring to communicating to your boss, communicating to those who are in charge. You need to be really good at that. They need to be able to trust you. For instance, last year, it seems like a whole lifetime ago, 2019, I was working through a class idea for this church of statistics of the Church of Christ, and specifically statistics for this church. I spent hours, my wife and I did, in the library there, looking through past bulletins, going through attendance of Sunday morning, Sunday evening, Wednesday class, finding out when preachers came in and out and that kind of stuff. And my goal there was, it didn't happen because I got sidetracked, and then we had COVID, and then we came up with those Ephesian things, and it was all great. I had no problem. But if I was to present that without talking to the elders first, I might walk in and say, here's the numbers, and everybody takes away a different thing from my numbers and says, oh no, the church is doomed, we're out. And instead of doing that, my plan was to present it to the elders first and to communicate to them and say, here's what my plan was, here's what I was going to say, and here's how I thought we could fix some things if that was the route we wanted to go. So the point there was manage, communicate. Don't just go in there and do what you want to do without communicating to your bosses. Broadening your perspective. Is there really only one way to accomplish a task? There's not. If you live in a bubble or in a black box, you might think there's only one way, this is what we've got to do. But there are other things you can do. Get out there, take a class, if that helps. I don't know what your project might be in this church, but get out there, read, talk to other people. By talking to other people, you could expand your network. Use collective knowledge on this. Philippians 2, 3 through 4. So, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourselves. Each of you should look not only to your own interest, but also to the interest of others. So, we've got the expanding your network. Other people have done some things, have had experiences that you can leverage to help your task. And they may have seen it before. They may have tried it. For everybody who hasn't been here for 1,000 years, there was a time where this church actually flipped the morning service and the morning class times. You can actually see that in the attendance numbers, and it was fascinating. I had no idea until, like I said, I was working on a statistics class. You could talk to people if that was your idea to, hey, let's switch the class times. Talk to them, see how it works, see what didn't work. It's interesting. Then building your brand. Who are you? What is your reputation? What are you about? Are you the one who always says no when you're asked to do something in the church? Are you the one who has the great ideas but never follows through? Are you the one who can't teach a class because you're too nervous? And maybe that's me. But yeah, define who you are. And 10, I know this is great news, but this is the last slide. So how do you pursue a degree in project management? How does that tie into this church stuff? Well, every time you pursue a degree in anything, anybody who's got a college degree or even a high school degree can tell you, you got to study. You got to study. That involves the Bible. That involves whatever you're wanting to accomplish. You need to study the subject you want to improve in. 2 Timothy 3:16 through 17. All Scripture is God-breathed and useful, and is useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness, so that the man of God may be thoroughly equipped for every good work. You got to study. Imitate other managers or elders or leaders or admin that you respect. Imitation is the highest form of flattery. That is true. There are some really good people out there. We don't have to reinvent the wheel every time we want to do something. And then have the tools and skills to manage projects in the future. That's what the degree does. Even if that degree is from the School of Hard Knocks, the School of Experience, you have to work hard and study and and learn. You have to be willing to learn. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's right. And doctors, as we all know, never stop practicing, right? A joke. Okay, it didn't work. All right, so again, these are the 10. Hope you understand that you don't have to have a title to have influence, and you can accomplish tasks for God's kingdom without a title. So, thank you. That's what I got. No time for questions, obviously. Jay, you can't ask any questions that I can't answer. So it's good. Well, thank you. All right.